TGI ourselves. We're in the validation.
Welcome back to the US Africa Summit, currently going on here in Dallas, Texas.
Because of all that,
We
my whole life.
are at
We're sitting right
another
now, population
roundtable,
really in the century
high-level
close
dialogue
to 2 billion people.
on
It's already 50% urban,
business.
which is good.
President Boakai is on
What
this
we need
panel,
is competitive,
and they're
sustainable,
talking about
smart agriculture.
agriculture and value addition.
Or just to lay that as his background.
Welcome
As to where we're
again
going.
to
Because what I
another
want to
session
discuss is
as part of the US Africa
government perspective,
Business Summit,
private sector
currently
perspective.
going on here
All in
in Dallas,
we have the outlaw
Texas. We're here again, Executive Marshal,
ourselves included. The outlaw,
press
a number of companies
team
people are trading.
that is bringing you live
We're bringing in US companies.
dialogues and
Let's meet
conversations
with the African
that His Excellency
Now,
Joseph
the African
Boakai
private
is part of.
sector is mature. This is a theme for us. On the board of CC also, it's a very important theme. With that in mind here, I may turn first to Mr. President. As you know, we were in Liberia when you were vice president with Canada Renewables and looking at the whole rubber industry at the time.
Next one is with the president as well, about to talk about
industry collapse.
different involvement as well as the plans.
Understand is picking up again for the rubber industry as an example. It's not food, but it's agri industry, it's jobs. So what are the plans of government in terms of basically re-energizing the rubber industry?
Thank you. You're quite right with the rubber industry. One of the oldest, in fact the oldest rubber concessions we have is Firestone. Since 1926, almost 100 years. A lot of Liberians were involved in rubber, along with Firestone. When I was the Minister of Agriculture, we assisted the rubber farmers by providing them plenty material. Since then, they have had no suppliers that would appear to me that at some point in time we thought rubber was fading off the market. But a lot of farmers who have rubber plantations had to cut down the trees because of the price fluctuation. In Liberia, so far, Firestone remained the biggest rubber plantation, but with very or almost no assistance to the small farmers. The small farmers had to do it by themselves. Firestone seemed to be the price setter. And in fact, right now we do have some problems on the ground because the small farmers are demanding to export their product. And Firestone is asking for them to sell to them. Rubber has been one of our oldest crops, and we've been supplying rubber to the world since Firestone started. Right now, the rubber farmers are going through a lot of crisis in terms of pricing, and they're almost forcing us to allow them to export as much as we thought the industry should begin. By now, we have expected a Firestone will add value to rubber so that the farmers will sell. The farmers go through a lot, obtaining material, and able to pay the tappers to the extent that most of them are no longer collecting the latex. They need a coaxium to sell to Firestone. But even as at this time, they are putting pressure on us, they want to export for better prices. And the other way we can encourage that industry is to have the farmers to get fair price, to also be able to support it. One of our initiatives that we've taken, we just been in office for 3 months, and the Minister of Agriculture come with a proposal for aggressive investment in agriculture. And said rubber is one of those, especially the main export crop for the moment. We intend to move it to another level. But at the moment, the pricing, the demand to export, because of pricing, and that's why we have set up a committee to do some investigation. But Liberia still produces a lot of rubber. One of the other plantations over there was BM Courage, they closed down. So we only have NAC, Firestone, and one other company in the southeast. So I think rubber, the demand for rubber, it is increasing and the prices are still low. So we have to do something to encourage the people because that employs most of our people. And so we need to encourage the farmers to produce, but we need to give them price that they can live with at least.
Thank you, sir. So it's the inputs, the requirements, and a proper price to produce, which I think the neighbor of Dubai has actually got a little more proper. So I think this is an important part of the discussion, government, private sector. I think in the end, private sector cannot operate in that way. Proper support. Thank you for your thought. Hold on to it, I'll come back. One minister. Nigeria is very, not the opposite end of the scale in terms of size of population market. One of the things we keep hearing about, reading, knowing, is the availability of arable land in the world. 60%, some was calculating, the number I always see on the continent. Nigeria's got quite a lot of it too. Nigeria was a powerhouse exporter of all sorts of products, including rubber, by the way, back in the 70s. And cocoa and oil palm, which was, now it's all coming back. The question for you, Foreign Minister Excellency, is how, and I know it's a top priority for the administration, President Tinubu, what can government do to again, we're coming right back to the same issue, re-energize the ag sector in Nigeria? What are the specific kinds of activities the government's undertaking to support, make it interesting, both for Nigerian investors as well as foreign investors?
Thank you very much. Well, firstly, let me say that I bring warm greetings from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Vice President who was supposed to represent him here, unfortunately could not make it. This is very important for us, very important to Nigeria. So thank you for having us. I come from a generation of Nigerians and others in other parts of the world that grew up watching a TV series of a place that had a lot of oil and a lot of cows. And I also come from a country that has a lot of oil and a lot of cows. But that notwithstanding, let me say how happy I am to be here in the city of Dallas. And of course, the TV series was Dallas, but for those old enough to remember. And I'll come back to the cattle and the livestock afterwards. So President Tinubu has an agenda that has 8 focus areas, and food security is number 1, followed by poverty eradication, growing the economy, employment, and so it goes. And you can see how all of this goes back to agriculture, which still remains the mainstay of the majority of Nigerians because they rely on rain-fed subsistence agriculture. So that is why this administration is building on the achievements of the previous administration that did quite a lot of work on growing what we eat. So rice has become, we became a bit bourgeois and we turned to rice. So we are growing. There was a presidential rice initiative that saw to the expansion of rice production. Rice mills cropped up. So now the challenge is to sustain that. There was equally a presidential fertilizer initiative. And we invested quite a lot on infrastructure, specifically dams. We have what we refer to as river basin development authorities in different parts of the country. The Ministry of Agriculture and the Minister have a policy again that did not just start today, but they're embellishing on it, which is the National Technology and Innovation Policy, National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy. So the whole idea is to apply technology, and we have certain agencies that are specifically focusing on intermediate technology, on domesticating innovation and producing what we need in terms of machinery, in terms of equipment. We have the National Science Engineering Infrastructure Agency, NASENI it's called, that for instance, they have a project they're doing where they audited all the tractors that we have in country instead of going out to purchase new tractors that would cost an arm and a leg. They took stock of what we have and tried to fix as many as they can to start applying them, and then also that way, using some sort of, for lack of a better word, reverse technology, learn how to make them local. Same applies to photovoltaics and so many other things that they do. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me turn to Sylvia, because I think one of the issues I want to pull here, tease up before I come to you, is this connection of the smaller farmer to the industries. So making sure whether it's the rubber plantation, mill, rice mill, what has been your experience? What is the role that HCI Boca has been basically connecting the small farmer to the industrial value addition? What has been the issues that you've encountered having that really well put through? And I'd like to hear your thought actually. Sometimes a lot of sort of emphasis on the small farmer, isn't part of the goal makes a small farmer, like a larger farmer, more preferable farmer. Please also touch on that.
Thank you. And first of all, it's an incredible honor to be here on stage with this incredible individual. So thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate being here. So, I come to this conversation from the perspective of leading an international NGO who's been working for over 60 years around the world in food security, agricultural development, but also access to finance and social equity and inclusion, as well as economic development. We've learned a couple of things, I hope, in the last 60 years of working. The roots of our organization were working with organizations like USAID, FCC, DFC, and other donors. But one of the things we found in the very beginning, and we've learned that it's absolutely crucial to link governments and donors with the local actors on the ground who have context with which to know how to use the resources that are available. And I think that we lack, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier today about understanding the context in which we're working. I think it's also what we learned is we need to do this hand in hand with the private sector, making sure that we are making win-win commercial arrangements. And I think maybe early on in our history, in the history of development, there was a thought, oh, the private sector, wait a minute, that's not what we need to be talking about. We've turned that around and understand that we absolutely have to grow economies and employment at a large scale in order to move the needle. But it's absolutely critical to continue on past the, say, 5-year segment that a donor like a USAID or others would have into making sustainable, inclusive progress over the long term. And the way to do that is to get access to finance to the people who need it. And that often includes making sure that youth, who we need to bring back into agriculture, and women who make up more than 60% of the agriculture sector in many of the countries that are represented in this group. And access to finance is something that's now very important to us. We have created about 7 years ago an organization called AV Ventures, which is a for-profit arm of our nonprofit. What AV Ventures is seeking to do is to help those potentially successful actors to grow and improve their lots and their possibilities. So we know that there are a lot of very large companies who are successful, the banks, the industry, infrastructure, and then there's lots and lots of very, very small businesses. But what we need to do is put access to finance in that missing middle, and making sure that we do that in a parallel way. First of all, making sure that we can find that, and that means working with banks, working with other middlemen, figuring out how to inject the right amount of money. But it's also about working hand in hand with the potentially successful farmers who we see can grow. You know, we recently invested in Agribusinesses in Ghana, gave them an injection of cash and some technical assistance, and through that they used some really incredible digital innovations. And as a result of that, we've enhanced the productivity of over 15,000 farmers, improving their sales by 35%. But we've also helped with them, just working with them on their own needs and desires about climate smart technology and really creating equal opportunity. So the point is, we need to be bringing along those smallholder farmers who can be successful, so we can increase that middle group of farmers and inject finance for growth.
Thank you. Very well said. Baruch, you and I come out of the same ilk. So you're in the agri-industry across various sectors. First of all, in Nigeria and elsewhere in the continent. In Nigeria, what sort of challenges do you face? And if I were coming in as a potential partner, U.S. investor, what would you tell me are the things that challenges that I would have to face?
Well, I think when it comes to Nigeria, it's one of the most misunderstood countries in the world, not within the continent. If you look at agriculture, for example, we have probably the best agricultural policy on the continent, no doubt about it. And the reason why is it has taken a three-pronged approach. First is people. The entire agricultural policy of Nigeria has the fundamentals of how do we get people gainfully employed. So it targets the citizens, the rural people, the semi-urban people. How do I get these people to the field? The second one is policy. The policy is broken into 3 layers. There's a policy on agri-inputs. And like the Honorable Minister mentioned, that policy started probably 6 years ago. And at that point, there were only 7 fertilizer blending plants in Nigeria. Today, we have 80 blending plants. It talks about production. So you have a policy again that says, whatever the people plant will provide you with enough capital to get the inputs needed to enhance yield. And then will provide capital for those people to come and process what is produced. And as a result of that today, Nigeria has moved from 13 rice mills to over 90 rice mills in Nigeria. And so we have now created an ecosystem where the next phase is not an issue of availability but affordability. And you look at government policy on that affordability side, and you see that the entire system, whether it's the local authorities, the state level authorities, and the federal government, when it comes to filling strategic green reserves, when it comes to filling state reserves, when it comes to interventions for refugees and IDPs, government only buys Nigerian-made food items. And that is where investors are being encouraged to put more of their money into that. And where we saw the advantage of it was during COVID, where the entire world locked down. Everywhere. So those countries that were net importers were struggling. Everybody was saying, okay, how do I get food? Nothing from Nigeria. In fact, the only sector that was allowed to continue to operate during the entire COVID lockdown was the food and logistics sector. And the farmers were allowed to go to the field. We moved from one harvest a year to two, and now I dare say some of us are looking at 3 harvests per annum. And we're partnering with development partners to see how we can make it better. Now, when you say as a foreign investor, you ask what were the challenges that foreign investors would face. Nigerian economy is dominated by Nigerian businesses. Unlike other African countries, you have a lot of Nigerians investing in Nigeria. And you find that as we evolve, there are more domestic direct investors than foreign direct investors. Because the Nigerian banking sector is dominated by Nigerian banks. The Nigerian borrowing is dominated by Nigerian enterprises. And therefore, the spending is also dominated by Nigerians. So when as a foreigner you are coming to Nigeria, the first hurdle you have to cross is Nigerians. We're there waiting and we're ready to compete. And so, but we also are looking at partnerships. So, and that's where we find that a lot of collaboration happens. Many foreign investors that come to Nigeria in recent times, maybe 20, 30 years ago, it's completely different. But today, foreign investors coming to Nigeria always try to find the right partners that will work together with them. You probably have an experience or learning that we don't have, and vice versa. And that is where we can now work together to transition to the next layer of that evolutionary process of business development.
Thank you. So the challenge actually to me is the very reason for the strategic partnership. And I've spoken in the past, you see as a challenge, the person you face in Nigeria says that's a good partner, I'm ready to play. Right? That's very important. I want to come back to the president. You mentioned rice. I know it's a smaller country. You have a very large, quote unquote, we call it a cash crop. Never quite understood that there's the cash crops, business crops, but nonetheless, it's there. A lot of people, you're also big country, big consumers of rice. How does the government balance those two pressures? You've got a limited amount of land, its population is so large, so sufficient land, but between the focus of the food security versus the focus of export product, or is that a false argument to begin with? How do you see it?
Let me comment on the donor funding and NGOs that go to Liberia. We have to make them understand that we are not going to plant agriculture in our country. Most of the donors find it very easy to bypass the Ministry of Agriculture to finance projects that may not yield much benefit to the country. We don't think that's the way to go. We have to establish how we're going to fund agriculture. What are the projects? What are the crops that we're going to produce? And you want to work with us, make sure you liaise with the Ministry of Agriculture, because we know what we want to produce and how to finance projects outside the ministry, outside our plan, is the waste of resources. We normally I say, we hear about rice. I say Liberia is not a big rice consumer. We eat rice only 7 days a week. But we produce rice, we produce coffee, we produce cocoa, and we have a targeted market. One of our coffees we used to produce was special coffee in Liberia, and that went to a special market. So we have planned our agriculture. We know how many acres of rice we want to develop. We know how many acres of cocoa we want to develop, oil palm, and we want to encourage the donors to work with us because we are not going to work without a plan. And so we know that we want to do away with rice import, cut it down. Today in Liberia, we have rice coming from all over. It wasn't that way before. We want to make sure that we do work with a plan as to crops I want to produce, what quantity, in what locations. And I think we can put that. We want to make sure that the donors who want to work with us, we understand our priorities.
Thank you, sir. Let's get the American agribusiness here. The USDA and US agribusiness work hand in glove. I think that's a very important point you raised. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to add something. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we're here celebrating 20 years of MCC, which is an incredible accomplishment. But you know, one of the things that I recently witnessed was the creation of next stages of the compact, where we worked directly with the government of Mozambique directly, and they drove the car. It was their decision about where they wanted to work with MCC, and it was a co-creation process that put the right people in the right place. And so I hope that that model of co-creation, where the donors and the NGOs or anybody else who's supporting them sit in the back seat and provide the catalyzing investments that are focused on the local context, which are defined by the people closest to where they're going to be living the impacts of those decisions.
Very important point. Honorable Minister, I've come to Nigeria, I've faced Farouk. Okay? We're going forward. That challenge is resolved. Then I look at the next two things. I want to ask you afterwards how you handle that. Process requires power. Right? Smart agriculture, irrigation requires power. That drives irrigation. To be competitive, one of the advantages of Nigeria, you've got a huge domestic market. But you're still competing with the world. So how do we get access to those sort of things? Policy, and I know you have certain SAP sets, and you're also have to play with ADB. For power, for basic requirements that we need as investors, whether Nigerian, American. And also, we'll be very keen on this one issue. The land issue, the land titling, the uncertainty. We don't necessarily need to own the land. We need clarity as to who owns the land. There's a lot of lack of clarity. Those two issues, those challenges, power, infrastructure, and land titling are critical to really attracting, if you will, any kind of external investment to extend.
Okay, so with power, Nigeria sits on 206 trillion cubic feet of gas, which we must use as a transition fuel and also to fuel expanding our manufacturing capacity. part of which focuses on agricultural processing. So I talked about the River Basin Development Authorities. They are equivalent of the Tennessee Valley Authority. So we've got about, I think, 12 of them across the country. So the idea is to attract investors that will partner, as Farouk said, with Nigerians to set up agro-allied industries. We need the power. We're expanding our gas pipeline networks. We have the Ajakuta Abuja Kaduna Kano gas pipeline that is taking that is to take gas across from the south to the north. We have what we call the OB3, OB Open gas pipeline taking gas from southeast to southwest, and many more. So we've got that. Of course, we have also a lot of sun, so solar energy, captive power, off-grid solutions. The part of the challenge that the rice mills have is electricity power, and a lot of them are resorting to such solutions using renewable energy. So that is ongoing. You talked about what was the second thing?
Land issue.
The land issue. I thought that was a third. That was something else. But land issue,
Infrastructure being rolled.
infrastructure, yeah. So all of that is happening. Rail, roads, a lot of investment, a lot of Chinese players that come with the EPC wherewithal as well as the funds, because they're not as scared of risk, and they are also, you see, sometimes the application of the equator principles and all these other sort of obstacles that private players have to go through, the local private players, it's not there, as well as the government. So we need, I think, to take another look at the approach to risk. Risk is overplayed in Africa. It's something really that we need to look at it, and I'm not going to dwell too much on that, a different approach. And we also have to look at the ongoing processes or regulations that are coming into effect in the world. We're talking Basel IV regulations that are going to restrict lending African countries, most likely. We're talking supply chain laws, where you will have ongoing debates about whether if a 12-year-old boy comes home from school and helps with the farm work, it's child labor, whereas probably if you go to the wine growing regions of Europe, you'll find kids during the summer working, in the grapevines. So these are things that we have to look at objectively. But land use, a lot of the problems we have is in the wrong approach. People, sometimes investors or people coming from outside into Nigeria think they could just do a deal with the landowners and just buy land. We have a purposive constitution that is deliberately and specifically written in such a way that it protects Nigerians from their land being excised, from their land being appropriated outside. So it is, there is a way to go about it. The certificates of occupancy are issued primarily by the state governments. We have 36 states, so it's not even in the hands of the federal government. But that way, it has to be done through a process, that is cognizant of rule of law, of due process. Sometimes they just go to the rural areas, the locals, and just want to buy land. That's never going to happen. have to go through the right
I
process.
understand that. I mean, years on the continent, so the issue not just Nigeria. But I'll hold it for separate discussion. But sometimes even the smallest holder is entitled to land, can't go to the bank. Land is collateral.
That's
That's an issue also. So let me turn to Farouk. We've heard the responses back from the administration, Nigerian administration, operating Nigeria. Is it meeting your needs? One, and two, if you would also deal with this, because Minister mentioned the value change. And one thing that's been really bothering me, if you will, is African. We're not in the value chains, the raw food value chains. Everybody wants to speak about finished product. How much are we you play in certain parts of the value chain? How much of that is also at play for TGI?
So we actually play in the entire value chain, not some, but every single part of it, from seed multiplication, dining table. So anything that happens in between. And that is simply because we've taken a problem-solving approach to our business model. The African agricultural sector, actually, let me talk about Nigeria, and then if time permits, I'll maybe mention some of the other countries we operate in because it resonates with what His Excellency, the President of Liberia, mentioned. We do seed, agrochemicals, fertilizer. We don't own any land at all. We don't participate in land ownership simply because there's a community approach. When you go to rural areas and you try to commandeer 2, 3, 5,000 hectares of land, you will get some resistance. Why you take 5,000 hectares of my land? Oh, I'm an investor, but you are not from here. My grandmother was buried just 2 kilometers down the road. So how can you just show up and say you want this? And then you're going to use a bulldozer to convert my shrine into, So these are some of the things that we don't take the cultural nuances into account. So we show up with the community, we enter an agreement with them, we provide you with seeds, chemicals, fertilizers, you plant for us. When you harvest, if you choose, you sell to us. If you choose, sell to somebody else and give me my money back, I will still get it from the aggregator markets. All our factories are in rural areas, not even in Nigeria, in Benin, etc. And how do we address the power issue? We just go off-grid, either diesel or renewable, like what the minister said. So we use, like for example, the rice mill, which is probably the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa, 240,000 metric tons. We just use the husk. We use the husk, we burn it, we generate our electricity. The ash that comes out, we convert it to briquettes. Rural women use it to cook. Back up, we use diesel. But this new government, the President Tinubu administration, have actually showed up and provided an extra layer of support by saying, if you're an industry, the distribution companies must prioritize you. And so we are actually getting distribution companies coming to us and begging us, please take this because you pay your bills, whereas some of the retail consumers do not. And this is also something new that is also encouraging us to further expand. Once we finish it, and because of our remote location, some of the trucks that come to evacuate don't even operate in some of those areas. So we have to also operate in that value chain. Sometimes we sell tires, because when they come and they have a tire problem, okay, go to my agro dealer and buy the tires. Engine oil, petrol stations, etc. You have to solve your own problem. If you sit down and say, oh, government must come and help me, oh, this guy must come and help me, then you are not really private sector. A lot of the things that the private sector want is capital and enabling environment. And that is where we see it slightly different in other African countries where we operate. Their banking sector is not big. For you to solve these problems, you need a big, viable banking sector. So when you show up and you say, look, like the issue around roads, Nigeria has a program that says, if you want a road, apply, build it yourself, and claim the cost back from tax rebates. So if you have a banking sector that can support you to build a road, and you think that road is viable for your own business, go and build it. But some of these other countries do not have that. If you have issues around power and you want to build a power plant, there's an agency that supports you in establishing your own power plant where you sell the surplus back to the grid. And so that is the differences that we see between our country and maybe some of the countries next to us. And we're also lucky enough to have some of our cabinet members that, like, I was talking to the Minister of Foreign Affairs 2 days ago about an issue in one of the countries we're having, and he's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to call and fix it for you. And so it's the depth of the economy, financing, even if the enabling environment is there, if the financing is not there, the aid will not go that far. That's just the truth.
Thank you very much for that. President, can I think we have a few minutes here. On the land ownership titling issue, at least my experience in years of Liberia, you have a little bit more of a fixed titling for private property with the Liberia. Is that the case? I mean, do you deal less with land issues in Liberia? Not necessarily for foreign investment, even for domestic.
President Boakai was talking about the land issues.
I was talking about agriculture financing by partners, NGOs. One of the things that I noticed was that when there is funding, you have consultants, a lot of consultants who go to do research. There's nothing that people need to know about agriculture in Liberia that is not there. I always say, all these consultancy, when you copy from one man, it's plagiarism. When you copy from people, it's research. We have enough research in Liberia. All they take the same document, and all the money goes into consultancy. We have local knowledge, we have local consultants. We can do it. The thing about land in Liberia in particular, we have government land, we have land for people in the Leeward counties. Unfortunately, a lot of the investors go to look for diamond, gold, but I'm also go for example, oil palm. We have a policy that you do a nucleus farm, and then you have smallholders. That means you have the smallholders to grow the crop, and they can sell to you. And we've known that in many cases. But that is not a big issue when it comes to agriculture in Liberia. As a matter of fact, I want to encourage people. We have a lot of land for agriculture. We need to grow it, and we can do that now. And the way we do it is the big farmer work with the small farmers who are the smallholders. And in fact, the way we want to work now is to work through cooperatives. Because in the old days where people did cutlass to slash and burn, the days are over. Most of the young people are in school. We need to develop a system where we work with cooperatives, where people will work together, producing the same crop, and we assist them. But land is available, and the way we do it is, if you're a big farmer, you work with the small farmers as outgrowers. So in that case, they help you to produce what you want to produce, and they can sell to you because you may have a facility to do do the processing. So we have, most of the land issues we have is land for private development, construction, for agricultural land, we've been able to work that way.
Thank you very much. I think we're getting a bit short. How are we doing on time? Okay. I think we've covered sort of the key parts I wanted to cover. Knowledge matter, small and large, that's so critical. Tying in farm, the co-ops do not exist in large scale, by and large in the country. Use just our example, Schaefer. In the US, we don't farm. Yeah, in fact, these are owned by the co-ops. They're co-op banks and financing them. We basically process. I think that's ultimately the goal we're getting at, but we don't find that, so we end up basically doing that through industrial. Now, your experience also, Arun, in terms of outgrowers and people feeding into your buying to your plant, right? You're basically creating a kind of co-op, in essence, the buying co-op. So I think that seems to be the model that's working, reaching and maybe simply doing some thoughts. What can be from the U.S. experience? What would be interesting? The African partners or governments that we bring in as that industry. Now that's the flip side, fire on from the African perspective. What can we bring?
I'd like to turn that around if we don't mind and go back to your point, Your Excellency, that so much of the knowledge it already exists on the ground. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. We recently helped finance a company in northern Kenya called SolarGen, who have some really exciting ideas about how to get solar power into some very difficult areas. And as a result of that partnership and helping them finance, we were able to really help increase the amount of boreholes by 500, increasing arable land by 2,800. There's a lot. We have extended benefits to nearly 1.5 million people, and we also helped solve some of the renewable energy problems, saving almost 37,000 tons of CO2 emissions. But what was important in this story is not all of those results, which I think that SolarGen should be proud of, not us, is that we did help them develop a Sharia-compliant model to finance their solutions. So it was their solutions with a financing model that worked in their context. It wasn't our financing model, because there are not a lot of Sharia-compliant financing models in the United States. So it was really partnering with finding organizations who know their own pressing issues and helping them find their own solutions in a facilitated manner.
That is, I think, I'm an important American too, but I always say Americans are good at solution provisions, finding the solution. But this is where having a partnership is so critical, both with the government and with the private sector. But we hear, Mr. Minister, from your perspective, we're going to make a strategic alliance. What would you look for?
Well, for starters, AGOA. AGOA needs to be remodeled, or as we would say in Nigeria, we need to panel beat it in a way that American businesses can come to Nigeria, invest, and satisfy the seemingly large appetite for smoked Nigerian fish. Export that, yam, palm oil, because at the moment, Nigeria cannot export such products into the US, even under a board. So we need to, have a look at that. And then, of course, I talked about cows earlier. We have a national livestock transformation plan that's being implemented, and I think the model that applies with the Dutch is something that can work with the US, particularly Texas. So we have a company that has been in Nigeria for decades. Island Campina, that's a West African milk company. Most Nigerians grew up on peak milk, so they are partnering with Nigeria in improving the stock of cows for production of milk and sell locally and perhaps to other African countries. These are models.
Application to go up. As I leave you the last word, Brooke, other than keeping us out, what would be the strategic value of this partnership?
Come with an open mind. Don't think you know it all. Because obviously you are, like what the president mentioned, you are coming into a country where people have been doing it for decades, if not centuries. So you can't just come in from your own experience and say, okay, look, this is what I did in Oklahoma. I think it will work. It's not going to fly. But once you come with an open mind and you're engaged, you'll find that there are some snippets of logic that can now be expanded and blown into a viable, implementable program. I mean, it's like you get a Nigerian banker to come and be CEO of JP Morgan, it's not going to happen. And it's the same thing if you're coming into our own food sector or agricultural sector. Just come with an open mind. You see there's potential here. You know there's something here that can be done. Now let me find the right guy that will help me navigate through this. What is probably a bit scary terrain, but I can assure you that there's no other place in the world. And the guys that have proven this the most in the last decade or more is actually Indian investors that are coming into Africa. They show up with a bag. They don't know anyone, they don't know anything. They move straight into the bush. And in 5 years, they have a multinational. Olam is a good example. Olam started in Nigeria. And where's Olam today? And so when we start to say that, and the reason why they succeeded is because they just know there's something there. And they just showed up without any fear, and they made it work. And so the US, China, whoever, that's what you guys need to do. Because the next guys that are showing up into Nigeria after India, or into Africa after India, is the United Arab Emirates. And watch that space. They are also going to be fire brand. They are going to do a lot of crazy things in our neighborhood. China and the US are starting to decline. India is rising. UAE is following very quickly. Thanks. Thank you. Well.
He is Farouk.
And closing thoughts from you. What would you, from the standpoint of U.S. agro industry and business coming into Liberia, any particular areas?
President, they're asking President Boakai for his final reflection.
Say after global shift for what's the best Liberia.
Well, I have always said us kind of partnership. One is one that understands the way we work. I have seen a lot of projects come and fail because they don't understand. For example, Malaysian, I've been to Malaysia, I know how they grow up. But you can't bring a plantation manager to start production because you're not running a plantation. You're coming to start planting. And sometimes when you go with a knowledge that you think you come from an advanced country, it doesn't work. And sometimes they feel disappointed and they believe they're not cheap. For us, we have established system of work. We are open to innovation. We are open to learn skills, but agriculture is local. I mean, we have seen where even different species brought to different countries, it clearly wipe out the species of the country. So working in partnership takes the understanding that we do have local knowledge. We may not have the resources, and no matter we in resources for agriculture must be funded by agriculture banks that know different crop seasons. You cannot finance agriculture with a commercial bank because they don't fit it. The agriculture bank will understand agriculture finance. They know how long a specific crop takes to grow. So for us, we welcome any kind of partnership as long as you understand that you have to work with us. We do have the local knowledge. We may not have the resources, but that soil is ours, and we've been used to it, and so you work with us. And I have a farm, and to the entrance to my farm, I have the best fertilizer is your presence. No matter what you do, you can't be an absentee farmer. You have to. So, just for the understanding that the partnership is between us, and we have the local knowledge, and you may have the resources, that I think we can work together. And
Thank you, Mr. President. So if I can draw a few conclusions, what I have heard from the partnership standpoint really is, one, mentioned at the very beginning, land availability. Understanding how to deal with it, that's something that needs to be done, but is it available? The answer is yes. We have a lot of available land. Two, we've got a mature, particularly in Nigeria, no question about it, a mature business sector. It's easy for us to do business with business. That partners there. What I'm seeing increasingly, both Liberia and Nigeria, in the policies, is also policies are encouraging to the investors. In this case, could be domestic or international. In the end, maybe it's UAE, wherever it's coming from. But the fact is, it's under this sort of policy and planning rules that you have doing that, adding value. That value, we're working on the power. I think these are the strategic kind of components that I want to suss out of this discussion. Sorry, I ran out of time with the Q&As. Tomorrow we'll have a panel. We can dive deeper with some of the financiers. I'll moderate that one. Make sure we get Q&As, but I wanted to get the thoughts of these panelists. So if we could please give a big round of applause. I want to thank the panelists, the Minister, President, and my fellow Private Secretary. I don't know the protocol. Somebody help me out.
There you have it. We just concluded the high-level dialogue on investing in the agriculture sector, particularly agri-businesses. You listened to President Boakai specifically talking about some of his plans in the agriculture sector and what opportunities are there. This concludes day one for the team, but for the president, let me say, because the session continues and there are other meetings that different ministers are attending. So there you see President Boakai is greeting members of the panel and their high level people who are part of the event. This was a high level meeting or may I say a dialogue on agribusiness and investment in the agriculture sector. We're here on camera is Joseph Aki and Ula Fofana. There you see members of the president's team. The protocol is there. Oh, you have there's the senior advisor to the president, Dr. Augustine Connor. And did I just see the Minister of Information, Culture, Affairs and Tourism? And Dr. Kinaba as well. Oh, I think this is a photo opportunity with the panel. That's what's happening at the moment. See the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they're in a tete-a-tete with members of the Nigerian delegation. It was another wonderful panel where the president made the case and outlined his agenda for the sector. We are continuing our coverage here with the Excellency President Joseph Boakai at the U.S. Africa Summit happening here in Dallas, Texas, or may I say Fourth Ward, Dallas, Texas. And again, photo opportunities with Liberia's president, His Excellency Joseph Boakai. The Nigerian delegation taking some photos, photo ops, Minister of Education, Minister of Agriculture, may I say. I think this would be a need to speak with the Minister of Agriculture on what he makes of this engagement. You know, again, talked about a range of different issues in relation to the agriculture sector, investments with smallholder farmers, financing agricultural financing. Again, further opportunities continue as we continue this. I see the Minister of Agriculture right here. We're going to talk to him shortly, but when the president leaves, this is the final section for the president, but the different ministers will stay by and be here to participate in the other events in relation to the meeting here of the U.S. Africa Business Summit. We had the senior advisor, Dr. Augustine Connor, the Minister of Commerce was here. Again, there's still photo opportunities. So we will speak with the Minister of Agriculture shortly as the president leaves the hall. You see Mr. Cassidy, as well as Madam Genevieve Winstead. They've been really working very hard for this for the success of these engagements. And again, this was a high-level panel on agriculture. The theme for this just ended section was on food insecurity, actually coming from food insecurity to investment in the thriving agri-businesses, particularly helping African countries or African investors in the agriculture sector. I did promise that we're going to speak with our Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Alexander Nuta. Dr. Nuta, welcome to the Executive Mansion live podcast, or may I say live program here in Dallas, Texas, at the U.S. Africa Summit. I just saw that you were here as part of this high-level dialogue that just ended. Can you tell the Liberian people what do you make of this event, and how do you think Liberia can benefit from these kinds of dialogues, and what are you taking back home to Liberia as the Minister of Agriculture?
So let me first thank the President, the Chief Agriculture of Liberia, for the splendid presentation. I think he made the case for Liberian agriculture, and we intend to follow up with what he said. This forum has been very important for us as a country. We've been able to engage some of the key actors in global agriculture value chain development. We've been able to establish some connection that we intend to look forward to work with to follow explore after our return to Liberia. And one of the things that the President said that was very clear is he said the rubber sector in Liberia needs to be developed. He stressed the need for supporting smallholder farmers. I understood the point he made that we should look at the price that's set for smallholder farmers, and we intend to follow up on his system to the need. We want to make sure that the right technicians are put together to be able to set the prices that will be able to benefit our smallholder farmers. Yeah, I think it was a great forum.
So, distinguished listeners and viewers of this platform, we brought you live a high-level meeting with His Excellency President Joseph Boakai Sr., who led the panel discussion on agriculture. As you know, he is somewhere in his fields. You know, agriculture is like in the neck of his woods, and he did tell the audience about his plans. And one of the key points that he made mention was the fact that agriculture is local. What may work in Mozambique, for example, may not work in Liberia. There are diversity of ideas that are present in the country, and their context specific. And he also talked about the need for investments coming from agriculture based, and he highlighted. But most importantly, he is encouraging investment in our country. He also mentioned on the issue of land that we have. We have access to land and natural resources and other sectors, even food production. And from all of us here, thank you for being a part of this broadcast crew, especially those of you who have been following. Thanks to our cameraman, Mr. Luis Tamba, who's making sure that everything works, you know, that we got food to eat. To all of you